progressively, few things have started coming in. When we look at the data on open credit enablement network also, I think there the data is getting uploaded and there are a lot of things happening on agri credit, for example. There's data getting captured on land records. So I think we have started working on it, but 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, I think that's the time duration. Let me give you a very simple use case. I have local contact. I live in tier 3. I know the CPP guys very well personally. I can just do whatever I want to do with that CPP guy. And I can make any plot of 100 square feet as a 500 square feet plot also based on my own jugaads in that particular city. I think that has to change. Today, from a demand perspective, 25 crore, lakh crore, something which is a gap in the MSME funding as we speak today. This is the number
staggering
that
number.
it's a
25
staggering
lakh
number.
crore is the unserved demand.
Unserved demand that we have on MSME. But everybody started working on it, which was not the case few years back. And you need a economic push, you need a regulatory push, you need a government push, you need a lot of other pushes to look at. Investor push also to an extent. A lot of companies have emerged in the SME space and getting good fundings also.
Hello everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Pankaj, who's a good friend from our BFSI industry, who's also the Chief Business Officer with Bank Bazaar. Pankaj has been an industry veteran and been in BFSI industry throughout, and today we are here gathered together for an interesting conversation about MSME. Is it on a sustained growth or a hyper growth? It's one of the most hot topics of conversation across BFSI industry today. Pankaj, thank you very much for taking time out and welcome you to the podcast. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some fun conversing about this most interesting topic for our industry today.
Thank you, Sridhar. I think pleasure is all mine. And I think as we see industry is growing and we are into a stage where I think I'm sitting on a tip of an iceberg on the MSME sector that we talk. I think we've been interacting so far on the company side, on consumer side, but very good to have this, topic being discussed on MSMEs, which is the most important, I think, the backbone for the Indian economy that I see. So pleasure, absolutely pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you again. So on that note, maybe I'll touch upon a little bit to start with about what's the MSME segment in India, how does it operate, why it is so critical for us as a country, right? As a country, we are marching towards a $5 trillion economy. We're going to be very soon taking a goal of a $10 trillion economy, or other experts tell me that 5 trillion is almost done, right? The way the confidence that we are showing across as a country is significant, right? It's one of the good times for us to be in this industry. So I think Indian MSME segment is at a very, very good phase of inflection point where it can take off towards a great amount of growth, provided all of us in the industry are able to look at it as a segment to nurture, as a segment to look at giving it the vital importance, as well as what does it take for it to grow by leaps and bounds, right? Today we have about 6.3 crores kind of individuals who are registered as MSME organizations, about 25 crore people. It's almost economy of a country, right? Or multiple countries put together, right? That many people go to jobs in our MSMEs across urban, semi-urban, as well as the rural populations. We also have MSME sector, which contributing to 30% of our GPA, right? Total kind of a GDP kind of a value that they contribute. And they also contribute about 45% to the export. So given all these stats of the micro, small, medium enterprise kind of a business, right? We are pegged for a huge amount of growth, especially the rest of the country, which is about to get unleashed into the economy, the underserved, underbanked. I think underbanked is a little bit of a cliche word today because most of us are banked today. It's more about more products to be added for each of the portfolios today. That's where we stand as a country. Maybe your thoughts to reflect on MSME as an industry today, while these are the stats that come to my mind. Maybe a few more things that you wish to add, Pankaj.
Oh, great. I think, Sridhar, you're absolutely right. I think MSME is the backbone as I've just started this conversation with, right? MSME that we feel from our side today, you are absolutely right in terms of the contribution to GDP. 30% of the country, still it's not very formal. Still it's very informal the way it is being structured so far. And there are early shoots that we have started seeing, where it will suddenly grow into leaps and bounds from where it is, right? And if the country has to, when you are rightly right, our 5 trillion economy is one goal. But if you look at just latest data that we are now the world's 4th largest economy, in terms of the way that is structured. By 2028, 29, we are seeing that we'll be 3rd largest economy. It's just beyond USA, China, and India. So it looks good being a citizen of the country, being born here, to see this kind of growth coming in
Yeah.
from a country standpoint, being a national, I think this is a very important step, and we are seeing as the third largest economy globally. Maybe in next 3 years, we'll be working at that time, I'm sure.
I'm
So at
pretty
that
sure.
time, it makes great sense for us. Coming to a data, I think you're absolutely right. 30% of GDP is very strong number. 23 crore people, 120 million workers, organized, come non-organized, into SMEs. So formally and informally, this economy works not only in formal sector, it works very good on informal sector, directly or indirectly contributing to the employment of the country. Today, what we see is that employment is a major this thing, and this sector is the one which will deploy people and make sure that our employment growth rates are significantly higher, which will make sure that country has a great social balance beyond economic. I think the social balance is also critical to maintain. So I think to take that view, I would say that this is the time that we will witness that growth. Being the professionals, we are working with those companies, we are understanding on a daily basis the needs, and the tools are now working together. And I'm sure this will make a very potent combination for the country to grow from here. That's my view right now.
Also, your point on how is the rest of the environment coming together. For example, few years ago, we've solved the connectivity issues. Now we are trying to solve, or we are at the phase of solving the infrastructure issues, connectivity in terms of the data, in terms of the bandwidth. Today, I think we are one of the leading organizations in terms of number of smartphones that we use. There's accessibility which is there, as well as the reach which is there to every individuals. And to a certain extent, everybody is digitally well enabled as a country, right? Most of them know how to use certain things digitally, or we learn from each other very fast and do it, right? What other factors do you think are aiding this particular buoyancy in terms of, focus towards MSME as a sector? What are the macroeconomic or microeconomic factors in your experience that you've seen, which makes us think that we are at the right point?
So I'll tell you, if you look at Sridhar, in the past for the country, right, we have always been to traditional financial inclusion for people in terms of whether it is data, whether it is credit underwriting, everything has been very traditional. What we have seen, a non-traditional approach like an alternate data has started picking up very fast. So when we talk about alternate data, one thing that comes to our mind, first thing is about in terms of cash flow based lending. That's
Right.
a very significant leap that we have seen from an underwriting standpoint.
Yeah.
I don't need, because a lot of these SMEs today don't have a paper where we reflect on their cash flows the way it has been reflecting now. They were never been into, they were into very informal kind of economy that is to do the business. Today everybody is aware, that awareness is the first thing. So getting that particular person, the MSME, into a formal credit system is the first step, which has started happening in the country. So a lot of now, 11% of people have started taking informal, say formal credit, which is great. It was, if you look at the data in 2013, it was about 3%, which has now grown to about 11%. I'm sure the way this GST filing is coming up, in terms of the account aggregator frameworks getting done, your payment based lending is now started looking out. So cash flow backed with e-commerce data, backed with your payment data, that data merger is the new, I would say, the UPI movement for SME that is going to reflect in the country. So this gives me a lot of confidence that now a lot of these traditional banks and even the traditional credit bureaus will start understanding SME in a much different way, and start underwriting not only on traditional ways on which it is done. They will start underwriting consumers based on alternate data, backed with lot of GST return filings which is happening in the country, and then payment data backed with e-commerce. I think these are the four pillars, I would say, that will make sure that SME underwriting will make a different dent into our formal economy as we see.
I think in few sentences, you covered some 4 chapters in a book.
Yeah.
Right, to tell you precisely.
Yeah.
Let's go maybe a little deep dive into each one of that. This actually explains the capability as well as the confidence that we have in the MSME sector part of it, right? Now, the capability is very clearly that we got to set to grow the exports. We have the biggest dividend, which is the population which is willing to come and work in the country. Today, thanks to the connectivity across the organization, across the country, people are able to go ahead and work anywhere in the country and make things happen. In fact, some of the people working in remote areas post-COVID are actually driving the e-commerce players as well as various of those people to those locations, right? So there is good amount of confidence from the way we are spreading out as a country, right? Now, when you delve deeper into some of these aspects, right, you covered actually, as I said, 4 chapters. I truly mean it. Maybe we'll go with few things areas, right? What could be the needs of this sector? For example, what I've seen when you drive around across the country into various sectors, right? I can see majority of the schools changing over to bigger brand names, right?
Correct.
Then newer hotels, newer hospitals coming up, right? Then there are newer retail chains, all of course closer to the highway or the railway stations, wherever that is, right? But that itself is a significant amount of progress because most of those people who are wanting to get served with those locations, they don't have to come to nearest cities, right? It's there within the reach for them. So if you look at serving some of the customers across, let's say D and E and F class kind of cities, what is it that you're seeing as a surge in this sector of people, what their needs, and what is driving that particular inertia?
Got it. So I'll answer in two parts. So first and foremost, you are absolutely right. The connectivity is getting dismantled, right? In terms of everybody is able to connect either through a phone, either through a rail, either through a infrastructure built up. So physical convergence is in any which way is coming into play. There is no iota of doubt in the country the way you look at your data on your number of highways being laid in the last 10, 15 years, right? It's phenomenal. The connectivity between a tier 4, tier 3, tier 2 and then to a metro is becoming phenomenal for the country. So the basic infrastructure is coming in. So the connectivity part is done. Today, if you look at all these large e-commerce companies, these companies are any which ways connected to majority of the pin codes that we serve today. You know, they're serving to the remotest of the places, delivery those particular things. The logistics is becoming a big enabler for these people to consume those products.
Yep.
Now, coming to your point in terms of how I would say the SME sector will benefit is that, see, one is a consumption-based economy. As you know, India is a consumption-based economy. So if I'm able to consume something, I need to produce it also.
Yeah.
Exactly the way manufacturing has started growing. SME, so we guys are all jugaad guys, right? In terms of we build something and then we are able to put it. So India as a country is full of jugaad, intelligence, hard work, and passion.
Yep.
What we see today, right? What we have done in consumer markets, and being from Perfios, you are absolutely aware. With that, we have created cohorts for consumers. Same cohorts in terms of age, vintage, in terms of behavior, socioeconomic statuses, we have built into consumer businesses. I think the same reflection we'll have to see in SME. They'll have to create pivots within the cohorts and segment them based on their behavior. So every, as you rightly said, Sridhar, every particular, like a hospital, like a shopkeeper, they have two different behaviors on which this entire business works. So what is the recommendation here is that we should create cohorts even for SMEs. The cohorts should have different behavioral patterns, should have different hyper personalization. I will not, maybe hyper personalization should be too much right now. Maybe 3 to 5 years you will move into hyper personalization, but with SME we'll start with personalization. Hyper is something that we have started doing it with some other this thing, but personalization is something that we should start looking at. So today I cannot paint the same brush for all SMEs the way I was doing it 10 years back.
Yeah.
Today I have to have a separate segment cohort, segment underwriting, separate cash flow based analysis, behavior, socio demographics, and then marry everything together into one package. It's not easy, but we have started building it because data has started coming in. You look at credit bureaus, it was like 15 years back, the credit bureaus were struggling in the India because data was not there. Today, after 15, 20 years, the data has started becoming rich. You are able to underwrite a customer. Upfront, you can tell him you are good to go, you're not good to go. And that's where your digital technology, all your stuff starts working off. Same thing with SME. The data will get richer and richer year on year. And once the data gets richer, and the data dynamics will be different. The data cohorts will be different. Here you do it based still on salaries, you're based on your credit bureau scores. There you do it based on your cash flows.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even in consumer, in certain pockets, either you must have seen like gig workers.
Yep.
They are also today being, appraised like a cash flow based underwriting. So that's a straight cohort that you can pivot into an SME.
Yep.
If I can do it for a consumer with 25,000 rupees income, which comes 3 days may one time, same thing I think you can cohort with your SME, where you can know that this customer will get this particular income or his revenue being credited on this X date. And based on that, the lending tranches will start for you.
So the thought process from what you're saying has to be a little different. Most of us tried templatizing what we use a journey for a retail to look at using the same thing and say MSME can be a flip. It is not a flip actually. We should look at from grounds up, very different format.
Correct.
from the point of pivots of a salary versus a bank statement versus any of the financial records, you should look at what's the inflow they have. But let me just nudge you a little bit on one aspect that came to my mind, which is about the underwriting bias. One is data being made available about, let's say, if somebody who's a manufacturer of a toys. If we take this example, right? In a remote part of the country, he's manufacturing toys, right? Now, if there is a lack of data for the underwriter to know about what's the kind of a size of a toy industry, whom does he compete with, what's the kind of a scale it has, and if it is a ecologically safe product as a product for disposing or reuse and things like that, right? If that kind of a data is available for an underwriter, do you see that perspective changing for an underwriter who's able to make a decision on a toy manufacturer on a remote part of a country? What kind of a data that needs to come in for him to deal with this unconscious bias? Maybe I will call this as an unconscious bias, not a conscious bias. Because I'm just taking a simple toy manufacturer for kids' toys at that particular grade that he manufactures, for instance, right? So what kind of a data do you think we should look at it, imagining this journey, how the underwriting should happen for this kind of a persona of an industry?
A good question. I think the point here is the data analysis will depend on a absolute in terms of the cohort that you're looking at. For example, a toy manufacturer in this case. For example, if I had been a lender, like look at from the eyes of a lender, what does he need? He needs comfort that this payment, what he's making to that particular person, will come back to him.
Yeah.
So that's the key credit appraisal process, right? The collection should be in line in terms of the guy is able to collect that money from that particular consumer, and there has to be no fraud. I think these are the three broad elements.
Also, just to add to that, what is this being used for? Is it for a capital purchase?
Correct.
Or he's got an order book that he can serve?
Correct.
Or what kind of a demand that he's seeing based on the past record of what's the kind of sale that has happened? Exactly. Those are the things that we should look at it, right?
So basically in consumer side, we normally never see the finally what is that particular purpose on which is using, except in the last few years, if you look at crypto, it went off on that side, right? So I'll maybe disconnect it right now from that perspective in terms of use case.
Yeah.
In SME, you are absolutely right. SME, that use case is very critical because it's going to be in tranches again and again. You have to keep refinancing that particular customer to stay put. So you're absolutely right. When we look at a toy manufacturer, the one thing that comes to our mind, first thing is that in terms of the cash flow, the periodicity of the cash flow. So this is one thing, as number of payments that he's receiving, number of transactions on a daily basis. Then there's a trend around it for last 6 months. How many months? What is the number? Is the sales going up? Is the sales going down? Everything can be analyzed on the cash flow.
Yep.
So which is one aspect. Second aspect is on payments. As I started this conversation, right? What are the vendors he's making payments to? What is the frequency of those payments to be made? Then you are able to know the debt burden ratio for him, even in SME sector, right? In terms of 100 rupees I'm receiving, 80 rupees I have to pay. What is the working capital available for that time period? So I think those match-offs will be technically, digitally being available in one shot. Now the great point today, what we are seeing, Sridhar, is that these platforms, including Perfios also, are able to integrate all your algorithms based on invoicing, payments. They can marry everything together and this become like a SME passport on financial inclusion. That passport will be critical to understand. He will have a complete record of how many vendors he has paid, what is the frequency on the vendors, how much money is he giving, what is the time duration, how much working capital will be required for that duration, and so on and so forth. So there are 100 variables that you can put in terms of analyzing. I am sure these traditional lenders also, when they see the data, say GST filing is now coming up. Your account aggregator will tell you bank statement. So when you marry now alternate data with your bank statement on current accounts, and you marry it along with your payments, and obviously with your vendor management system on due diligence, I think this 4 potent combination can serve an alternate data for you without being truly blind about appraising a particular SME, which was the challenge that the country was facing.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think borrowing your previous part of the conversation, right? You actually touched upon 4 things for MSME sector. First one is, of course, on the credit part of it. Second one is where you spoke about technology. That comes in personalization. We can delve a little deeper into it. Third one is the reach or the marketing, right? How can they easily market the products? We'll also touch upon that. Fourth most important one is compliance. How can they stay compliant so that they're able to consistently grow year on year, right? Some of the initiatives that government has launched. So going a little deeper onto the credit aspect of it itself, right? So if one area of challenge that we discovered is to look at how do we look at applicant who's applying for an MSME loan from the two personas, which is the person who's going to lend, the organization which is going to lend, as well as somebody who's going to borrow. Between two of them, what's the kind of a data that is required, with an intent to see to it that you are underwriting on the right parameters. We delve a lot deeper into those parameters and things like that, and how exactly do I underwrite them, as well as taking a quotient of the growth factor in the country. Maybe your thought process on, let's say, for example, somebody is betting on a good product today, right? On a product that he or she wants to go ahead and manufacture, and there is a potential, imagining a simple Shark Tank kind of a situation where he's able to do about 1 crore of a business. He wants to borrow another crore to double his or triple his turnover, right? Now, how much of it factor of future growth, economic situations, as well as how this product can be marketed better across the country if he's got the reach, will you factor into underwriting? Right? One factor is all the finite factors we spoke about. The other part of little outside of the finite factors could be that, hey, if this product had a reach to about, let's say, another 4 or 5 states, his turnover can go up significantly big, right? As underwriters, we'll also have some kind of a viewpoint towards it, saying that, hey, this seems to be a really good product, and why don't I look at giving them guidance, or can I estimate it based on this? Would underwriters also look at this perspective?
No, great question. I think Sridhar, it's a damn good question, but I'll answer it in a very simple term. The challenge in underwriting is whatever financing they do it based on the past data.
Yeah.
Futuristic, still in our scheme of things, the bets are made by venture capitalists.
Yeah.
You know, we are a funded company, you are a funded company. All these VCs, investments, these guys are still looking at more from that perspective, rather than the underwriters traditionally look at from a debt perspective in terms of the cash flow. Because if I take an equity is different than a debt right now. The point you have made is very interesting, because today even most of these credit underwriters don't look at a 3-year, 5-year this thing. They look at cash flow, that they'll just extrapolate the cash flow. They will not put in those criteria that this multiplier will move X to X plus 20, 30, 40%, whatever it is. And they'll not buffer it into their underwriting this. They'll be conservative with that. They'll say any which is I have a comfort because this 100% will come back to me within this time frame. And the challenge that we see is still the same, that if you look at term, that's a problem. It has to change when modular credit underwritings being done and modular tranches being delivered to these SMEs. You cannot have a term loan like a scenario that you have to pay me EMI for 1 lakh rupees for the next 10 years. That wouldn't work for the SME. You have to look at it modularly. For example, I need cash flow for 3 months. I need 5 lakhs to be returned back to the bank. That's the kind of exposure I'll take, because it's a seasonal product.
Right.
That kind of a modularity has to be built into underwriting, that I don't need a comprehensive 10-year, 1 lakh EMI kind of a loan for the next. No, I need only for 4 months to manage that seasonality. I think these are some of the tickers that our underwriting will have to go through more than just a normal formal credit ecosystem.
Correct.
Second good thing what I'm seeing is a lot of SMEs, as you rightly said, Shark Tank, for example. It's just one, I know the valuations on Shark Tank are great. So let's put it separately. But the fact of the matter is that in terms of me being funding a lot of companies and being funded also, we exactly know these people understand the future.
Yeah.
They will go and see that this company will make X value in the next 5 years. That's also money that is coming in. The form of the money will be different. I would urge all the MSMEs to build their ecosystem like this, that they are good for a debt, they are good for an equity based on their need and based on their demand. I think that is the key marriage that these people will have to make in our country. Debt plus equity put together will be a potent combination.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very well summarized.
Yeah,
Very
thank
nice.
you.
So that's sort of, you were also alluding towards sort of a credit line that you'll give them for 4 months based on a confidence that what they can give. It's also, let's not take away the fact that the person who's borrowing also needs to give confidence, right? Because of the fact that this is a sector where there could be some of the pitfalls or the trails or some of the issues that can go through, right? Let's move towards part of credit itself where technology can play a big role, right? Where tech can play a big role. One is, you alluded towards some part of a data that needs to come to an underwriter about both the organizations, right? About their own, what an underwriter would see versus what are the details which a lender, a person who wants to borrow has to go ahead and provide it to the lender in order to assess. in this assessment, obviously, we are going to do it based on the future amount of money that's going to come in or the existing cash flow that's coming and what's predicted kind of a viewpoint, right? And what's the kind of outflows that he's doing, all of that you spoke about. Is there an efficient way of looking at it? Because today we have account aggregator kind of a platform for whoever is salaried, wherein, you're at least able to track 2 or 3 accounts, right? In this segment, how do you assess what's the kind of inflow, outflow that happens? What's the kind of anomalies that you would see, and how technology could probably help you there?
I think what we are seeing with this account aggregator maturing every day, it's maturing. I would say we are in a process, progressive and sustainable. I think what we have seen in the last few years, it's sustainable, and a lot of data providers are coming on the platform thanks to the government push, regulator push. People have started sharing information. So the data is getting richer day by day. Today you have GST being plugged in. We are expecting a lot of other data being to put into the account aggregator framework. So for example, if I have a bank statement, I have an account aggregator plugged in. So today, as we talked about SME passport, for example, if we have account aggregator plugged in, if we have bank statement plugged in, if we can have a leverage on this, and these are things which are available now because AI is making it possible.
Correct.
If 10 years back you would have been sitting on the same chair, you wouldn't have been able to even talk about it. But today, everybody knows that this is going to execute. It's in the GST filings have started coming up. You will see a lot of data getting married with bank statements. So I'm sure SME doesn't need to submit those 50 pages bank statement unlike earlier. It was a
Earlier days.
tough thing for them. I feel pity for them at point of time because today this account aggregator itself gives you just what you need. I just need to provide you consent.
Correct.
That's the and today, as I rightly said, we spoke right when we started this conversation. The trust in the financial system has to be there. This is something which is an awareness which is coming up day by day, and this is going to take country to the next level.
Yep.
If you talk about US, right, and these are public available data, US itself doesn't trust their own social security systems. And this is publicly available. A lot of Congress, they've already said that. I'm just trying to say the same thing, that in India, the adoption rates are pretty high. You look at UPI today.
Yep.
The trust itself is reflecting on every Tom, Dick and Harry, right from a neighborhood guy like your sabjiwala to anybody like the most efficient like you also are using the payment. So
Absolutely.
there is that economic divide from a payment has already got minimized. Same thing will happen for SME the moment we start looking at it from those eyes. You will see that a guy who was struggling with data, who was struggling with this thing, there is a repository which the government itself has started creating in their tech stack, right? That tech stack will convert into data. That data, in which ways we have technologies. You as a company, you know how much innovation you have been put in, right? So that data is already coming in. We can make account statements with account aggregator and banks, and we can make it, right? 2 companies, we can make it, right?
Yes.
So imagine how many companies can even do it.
Yep.
If we are just sitting here, 2 companies can make it, then 20 companies can also make it,
Absolutely.
right? So there is nothing that we see which is holding on to it, right?
Yep.
Regulator is supporting. There is an infrastructure which is available, and unlike other countries where you have to pay for that infrastructure, it's free of cost.
Exactly.
I can just go ping with a privacy, with a consent, and I'm good to go. And there's no data leakages I'm worried about. So I think this is something which is going to be a phenomenal change.
Yep.
Technology is available, data is available, consumer is available, and then you have now the credit guy who's going to look at it and start making policies around it. That's the last step.
Rest of the countries in the world were boasting about infrastructure. We laid out phenomenal digital public infrastructure,
exactly.
right? Which is actually becoming the backbone for us.
Correct.
So on the same lines, for example, today, if I'm a shopkeeper, for example, if somebody is able to take a picture of my billboard, they're able to look at analyzing based on the address as well as the GST filing. They're able to pull all the company data. And the issue about vernacular piece is also solved today, for example, right? Now, this is how AI can actually influence into underwriting, saying that, hey, just by taking a picture of a shop billboard, we're able to pull all the data, and that data is available right there, right? About that particular establishment, all of it. Also, similar thing can be applied to satellite imagery, agriculture data, right? All of it, right? Now, AI is one thing that I wanted to touch upon you in terms of how could it help in solving any of the fraud areas, right? For example, right? We're still fraught with fraud because MSMEs are far away reachable for maybe a centralized lending organization to look at doing underwriting and things like that, right? What kind of frauds that you have seen which can be countered by AI? I know this question is completely out of bounds that I'm asking you, right? But as we're getting along the conversation, are you seeing the fraudulent transactions? How are you able to catch it, and how are you able to arrest it initially itself, and where technology can play possibly a role there, right? Because with AI we are solving the data part of it, right? But that's where if people are not using data, they are gullible to fraud,
Correct.
right? So I wanted to just you to touch upon this piece.
So Sridhar, I'll tell you for frauds that we see. Normally, there are two major frauds. One is your identity thefts, right? This happens in consumer. This will happen in even MSMEs.
MSMEs as well.
Because identity is something that I'll say that I'm Pankaj Bansal, but somewhere in the PAN card it's Sridhar and somewhere there's somebody else, right? So that identity theft, any which is we are able to crack with our AI modeling that we built in. There's a large data pool that we know this is an AI mapping. So for example, just an example, in consumer side, we map PAN Aadhaar.
Right.
It's a straight, we map mobile, we map babe date of birth. You can fudge 1 or 2, 3 things, but you cannot fudge 10 things in the entire bargain, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that, and every 10 things will just be on a click of a button. You do it and there will be 5 seconds, everything will come out that these 20 pages are ticked, and you cannot do it identity theft beyond that.
Yeah.
Our identity thefts have started decreasing in the country, which was the major issue. Aadhaar, PAN, eKYC today, you know all your addresses with your eKYC, that 5 addresses, any address that you change, you'll start looking at it. So all that stuff now is coming up, mobile numbers mapping, even dual SIM mapping, so geo-tagging. So there are so many technological advancements that we have seen, and thanks to COVID. I think I'll give all the credits. It was a tough time for all of us, but that time taught us that we can do something which was impossible to even think of before 2019, right? Or 1920 types. So I think same thing we see in SME also. There's data available on GST. There is a data available on MCA. There's a data available on bank credits, bank statements. So there's a data available on your privacy. There's data available on your identity. So if you even look at and marrying the two, and see the good point about AI is that they can process large data with just a click of a button.
Yeah.
Unlike you and me cannot do it, right? We can do it on Excel, we can do it on Pivot, but we cannot do what they can do with just one query being run, and the entire data will get you whatever you want. So early indicators. The most important thing when we look at credit is early indicators on behaviors and patterns, right? Coming from the background, see, we still can, the one problem that we will face as a challenge today, we can analyze ability for a consumer to pay back. We cannot analyze the willingness to pay.
Yeah.
That willingness is something that I think will be the key factor. It could be socio-economic, it could be, I'm sure there will be technologies available that somebody will come and talk to you, Sridhar, and they'll map your brain, and sometimes they'll say that, boss, Sridhar is thinking to default in like 6 months, something like that. Predictive analysis will come.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So that, and I'm sure this will come with AI being done.
Yeah.
Today, just go to any AI tool, right? Sridhar will say, Sridhar, I am 45 years of age. Look at my age in 60 years. He'll give you a photo which will be very similar to you.
Similar.
You know, there are personas that people have started creating. So I think from that perspective, same thing, they will create that this guy is thinking this in 5 years ahead of time.
That's an interesting topic that you're adding to underwriting. How the thought process itself is emerging.
Is emerging.
Yeah.
So if I can predict you how you look, I can predict you, will there,
how will
in
you
healthcare if you go, they'll predict that will you have this disease in 5 years based on your genetics. You can predict your 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what kind of diseases we will be going through with our genetic plus our data in the last 10 years.
Where do we stay? What kind of...
Absolutely.
Which city do you breathe? Now AQIs are also publicly available data.
Everything is. I mean, that data will tell you this is how you will look like. So unfortunately, astrologers won't be needed. There will be an AI tool which will predict your astrology. Today, look at Janam Kundlis also. Used to predict those with our Pandits earlier, right?
Correct.
Today you go on this thing and you'll get everything in 1 minute. You can just marry whomsoever you want to marry based on the data. So I think this is interestingly happening in the space that we are talking also. So predictive analysis, huge data, segmentations, and data analysis, and early indicators. I think if you're able to gap, I am sure our prediction rates will be far, far better in the next coming couple of years.
Wow. Amazing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure most of the organizations like us are still training those small language models, large language models, reducing the hallucination, as well as looking at what are the core use cases. But good part for us as a country is I think one other big dividend for us is also that we are data rich with respect to good quality amount of data which is available in BFSI, right? That data can be put into use in the right manner to look at arriving at any of the logic, be it fraud, be it underwriting, be it looking at, how do I personalize, to your point about personalization itself, right? Where does this person live? What is their consumption patterns over a period of time? And this is the time of the year they celebrate, or this is the time of the year the family comes together. All of that can come together. And that's a time to lend as well. After that is where your credit cards blow up, and that's the time you go back and ask them for a personal loan as well, right? AI can start predicting. So AI use cases will be very, very interesting, and we also touched upon the Gen AI use cases. Along with it, I wanted you to touch upon a little bit of a different factor of, as a country, we've been digitizing land records for a long time.
Correct.
Right? Now, with the advent of AI, we are also solving the language issues.
Correct.
Most of the land records are actually in the local language. The mother deeds are all written in the local language, right? Today, after the digitization, we are able to at least get an extract using AI. Using Gen AI, we are able to get an extract in the local language and say this is what it actually means. That any thought process on how you guys have been using this data to underwrite anything? You had an opportunity in your vast experience that how are you seeing some of, let's say, for example, a land record document in ODIA used for underwriting, how are able to pull the data and say, this is the kind of a genesis I have across this property and things like that, maybe in your experience, or feel free to say if it was not done, maybe we can hallucinate together.
Yeah.
Right?
No, good point. I think, we have started doing, but still I would say in the nascent stage right now. It's like some of those pings that we do doesn't get responses also.
Yeah.
Still the data is maturing.
Correct.
But if you look at our business models, like still in some places we are phygital, which is also okay.
Yeah.
We have moved from pure physical to phygital. Something in digital side, some forms that we build in. Land records, you rightly said that we ping 100, maybe some will not come
Success
through.
Rate will
Success
be
rates
low.
won't be there. So I think this is going to happen. But over a process, I think progressively we are moving towards that direction that this will be digitalized. Once it is digitalized, then we know that this guy has, earlier you remember 5-6 people would have taken the loan on that same particular land. And nobody will have a clue. And that problem, I think we are in the process of solving. Metros, majority we are able to do it. But still in tier 2, 3, 4 cities, still because the land records are broken, you rightly said, AI is building from a national language to local language and so forth, and vice versa. So this is happening. But still the use case still is progressive. I will not say that it's stagnant, it's progressive. And I hope that in the next few years, I will not be able to name a number because it depends on the local speed of those digitalization also. So land records, judicial, the data from Justice Department of India has to marry with the land record also, because you never know if there is some kind of litigation happening. Then there is a guy who's basically into a local state cooperative body which has that land record also. So this is not a simple problem that is going to get solved.
Yeah.
But the good point we're seeing is progressively few things have started coming in. When we look at the data on open credit enablement network also, I think there the data is getting uploaded, and there are a lot of things happening on agri credit, for example. There's data getting captured on land records. So I think we have started working on it, but 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, I think that's the time duration. But I think you're absolutely right. The moment the data receptivity is there, we ourselves will be able to give it to anybody sitting anywhere, and they can process it from anywhere without doing a physical verification. The next wave that I think is we have to move out of physical verification mode, because it's very difficult. Tomorrow, let me give you a very simple use case. I have local contact. I live in tier 3. I know the CPV guy is very well personally. I can just do whatever I want to do with that CPV guy. And I can make any plot of 100 square feet as a 500 square feet plot also based on my own jugaads in that particular city. I think that has to change in the country.
That has to change.
That has to change. And for that change, technology will enable, because technology just works on queries. They don't work on jugaads. So I think that is where I would look at the country, that I think that standardization of that process will, and with automation, I think will change the entire landscape. And we are seeing it happening. I think today both of our companies and the tech, our 100% sourcing is digital.
Correct.
Today if we source X number of consumers, all pure digital. There is no physical intervention. Not even a CPV is going for physical verification today for a customer who's getting a 2 lakh, 3 lakh of loan today. So tomorrow, I think that 2 lakh to 3 lakh will move to 20 lakh to 30 lakh also, with the concept, with the time, and with the new data being coming up. And every year we see that 2-3 lakh moving to 4 lakh without physical verification. That 4 lakh will move to 10 lakhs without physical verification. I think that's the area, and then it'll go to crores also for home, for land, for everything. It'll go into crores also, funding without a physical intervention from anyone.
Yeah.
So I think that's the concept, and I think our career is also based on that. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think assisted sale, what you're saying is also that assisted sale will have much more maturity as it moves along, right?
Yes.
Whether it's just assisting somebody to take a loan
Correct.
or verifying the whole thought process as well as physically seeing it and lending and things like that, right? That kind of will evolve over a period of time because of the fact that Gen AI can play a big role in that, rather than you just going ahead and physical visit saying, yeah, I saw the plot of land, I saw this is where the person resides, rather than imagine if the person takes a picture and that picture itself is analyzed with much more details. If you're able to take picture of a plot in 4 different directions, it can actually probably give dimensions as well, right? Through Gen AI, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot of assisted sale is going to become intelligent assisted sale, right? If we add intelligence to it through what Gen AI could do in terms of the pictures or the document that comes through as the person who's sitting in front of the borrower, he takes a picture of all the details and sends it across, right?
Correct.
So that's a big, big area of improvement as a country. But I like the push which is there to go digital. If something is not there, not updated, people today I've seen they're getting upset that how come the success rate is low? How come this record is not updated in the system and things like that, right? That's a kind of a innate behavior which is going to push digitalization to next level. We're going to become really a digital economy very, very soon, right? So shifting gears towards AI is one area that we spoke about, right? The other area also that what you touched upon is the whole taking DPI to next level, right? Which is ULI, which is tokenizing land records as well as tokenizing gold. The other aspect of it is how you spoke about agri and dairy are going to get merged. And there's a lot of dairy data also that's coming in because as a country, our milk consumption is the need because of the fact that we have the youngest population. And for that youngest population, we got to, milk is the most staple diet for all of us, right? So cow grazing as well as money that is going to come will be seen as a form to underwrite. That is, I like the way government is also promoting cow grazer. How can she take a loan? Is a question that's asked in the various forums today, right? So the significance of women is also because of the fact that women are seen as more responsible payees.
Correct.
Who repay right, as well as. So your thought process on what we could do more on looking at ULI, looking at agri, dairy-based lending. There's a larger part of the country, which is 70% of the country that is going to get included in the whole financial inclusion in a big way, and how, right? That's how that will be a big game changer for us as a country, right? Maybe your thought process around agri lending, dairy lending, with the ULI coming in, and $5 to $10 trillion economy, and what are the things to watch out? Maybe you can speak about those areas.
So you're absolutely right. I think are still as an agri-based economy, right? Still a lot of focus is there. And the moment you look at agri, people look at countries that agri is a negative sense in terms of, they say that, right, let's move from agri to manufacturing. I think that's what the concept people are talking, because if you become a developed nation, none of the developed nations are an agri-based economy. And we are talking about developed nations right here. So I think what is happening today, it is 2 parts. One, there's so much of innovation happening even on agri, on dairy, in terms of drones, in terms of stuff which a farmer today which was doing it on their hand. And I think this is something which technology will aid. I am not saying only on financial technology. I'm talking about normal technologies like crops ke liye, enhancements in crops and all that stuff. So one is on that agri side. Now that is making sure that the crops are sustainable. There are no surprises with rain coming in, predictability of rain and all that stuff. So you need to move out of the error rates in terms of the delivery of that particular crop that we look at it. Same with dairy also. The more what is happening, the dairy reforms are coming in. There are cows which you feed them next thing, which will give a better result. I think those predictive natures of those economies are working on. Now I'll marry the two with the ULI, which is your lending ecosystem. I'd still say one is a taker, one is a giver. So in this case, there are challenges because those guys are not that aware. We are making those products sitting from Bombay, for example. Our awareness level will be different from an awareness level sitting in tier 4, tier 3. They still will need a hand holding,
Yeah.
awareness. Somebody from like a concept like, business correspondent, for example. If we tag it along with ULI, with the business correspondent, and make sure that this guy goes to their home, maybe upload can happen on an app, but finally somebody will have to assist how to do it in the first few 6 to 12
Somebody
months.
who's very trusted,
is
somebody who doesn't take them for a
trusted,
ride.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Because today, if I am in a village, right, my trust will not be on Pankaj or Sridhar, right?
Yeah.
My trust will be on my local guardian there,
Yes.
who will come to me, talk to me, show him this is what. So bank, RBI, or anybody who's driving that initiative has to make sure that somebody from that particular region is there with them, upload them, show him the process, and it might take 6 months, 12 months to adopt. The moment they adopt it, then they will start doing it. But the first phase in the 6 to 12 months, there has to be handholding which has to happen, which can be physical, as I told you, which phygital in nature. So physically somebody being there, local guardian assisting them to upload everything, and from there, then the process will take over. I think this is the first view that I have. So technology with phygital nature of the business delivery, that concept, and you have to UPI. If you wouldn't have given me a rebate, right?
Yeah.
Nobody would have
Nobody would have
transacted.
transacted.
Let's be honest.
True.
Same thing I think is the moment in SME. You have to give them some kind of infrastructure support. We tell it acquire a development fund for some of our businesses. Same thing, the development fund has to get created. The development fund has to be passed on to these people to incentivize. Other business model won't work. So today, everything works on, I think, public-private partnership, at least on the ULI side. Government has made this particular thing. Private is ready to fund, but there's still a gap in terms of awareness and the last mile user. That has to be funded in some form and shape with a common pool, which will make awareness for that particular product to the last mile and show them how it is done. Rather than expecting them to do it, they can't do it.
So actually touched a very interesting topic of new kind of roles emerging or personas emerging who are trust holders, custodians of trust.
Correct.
Right? So there's always a topic, right? Whether do I trust AI or not? In this situation, I think for that particular farmer or for that particular cow grazer, whoever that is, whom would that person trust?
Correct.
Naturally, that person was trusting a loan shark because of the fact that all these years he or she has been seeing him around.
Correct.
And the person is always available. The person always lends money.
Correct.
The person also comes to collect the interest.
Correct.
They've sort of developed a not so great pattern, but there's a trust, some kind of a trust in that person.
Correct.
So how can we as the BFSI industry give the trust shield to them so that they are able to transact in a safe manner? Is a very, very interesting topic that you brought out actually. Right? That trust needs to be there for them to lend, which is their entire lifetime's earnings, which is a particular land or could be a particular cow or a tractor or whatever that could be, whatever the assets they have. How will they exactly tokenize it as well as give it so that they could borrow more or fulfill their needs, right? That's a very interesting topic that you brought out, right? That trust factor we'll see new roles emerging where in some of those regions where they're remotely based, you will have some of your trusted people who say, I'm from so-and-so, and I'm also certified by the government, so I'm here to help you go through this particular process. And the person who resides there locally could be government certifications also. It's a very, very nice topic. Thank you for bringing that angle, right? As we go with the other sectors, we'll have different things to counter, right? So coming back to our topic of expanding on MSME sector as well as lending, right? As we've been discussing, there are various patterns, very similar to agri as well as a dairy, right? There could be other patterns like, let's say, how are we going to serve underwriting needs of privatizing so many schools, for example, or schools which are being bought over, smaller private schools which are being bought over by other larger schools so that, they standardize the education, provide the infrastructure. That could be one. Medical equipment financing the other one, right? For example, generators for hospitals will be a very, very critical need, right? You'll have to look at how do you go ahead and fund generators. Are you seeing cohorts? Initially, you alluded towards cohorts, right? Are you seeing these cohorts, and these cohorts will need certain kind of data models to look at it For example, generator, what's the life of the generator? How do you look at it? Plus maybe the geo situation of what's the kind of a power availability there. Based on this, it's going to run this much amount of time. How do I lend? These are the ones that we'll have to go a little deeper as an industry to provide insights for both these people, buyer as well as the lender, right? For those people to look at it, right? Maybe your thoughts around these lines, how these cohorts could help the segment become richer with data and the better decision making.
Yeah. No, I think medical equipment has been a lot of companies like, if you remember few years back, maybe 15 years back, GE was the first company which started with medical equipment financing as a separate vertical in itself. So you're absolutely right. I think the need now, Sridhar, is to create verticals for these things. They're large, hospitality, healthcare, the large industries that we are propelling to. Today, you look at our maybe mortality rates might increase, but if you look at it from the hospitalization rates are very high. The insurance is any which way is coming handy for a lot of people of us. Every one of us has something or the other, like we have to go in hospital, which was not the case 20 years back or 25 years back, right? So I think there is verticalization which has to happen. Like you're absolutely right in terms of medical equipment underwriting. There has to be a guy who understands it deeper in terms of how does this machine works, how long this machine will work. This machine can be replaced by something else which will be even far more powerful. So how does that work is something that somebody and an expert has to look at it like a vertical, not like an horizontal business. So you have to cut down, you're absolutely right. Few segments you have to select on verticalization. Like you rightly said, medical equipment could be one, which I would personally say that yes, this, because in India, if you have to move healthcare to the next level, the medical equipment industry has to move. It's like the raw material to, expand that hospital, right? If you expand the hospital, your healthcare will become any which way start doing well. So I think everything is interconnected. You start with something, it will have a ripple effect on something else. And I'm sure on the positive side, not on a collateral damage side. So I think verticalization is critical. Specialist who manages that, even in our industries like VCs, if you look at it, there are people who are specialists like pharma. So they'll only focus on pharma. If I am a private equity investor, if I'm a pharma specialist, I'm working for 15, 20, I understand every drug in terms of how does it work and generic, non-generic, so and so forth. Same thing will happen with electronics, with technology, with banking. So we have so many verticals in which every guy is like a verticalized approach. And when you understand the industry deeper, financing is just one. It doesn't matter which product you are financing to. What matters is the ROI on that product. So I think that is the key element, I would say that.
Amazing. So most of MSME BLs will have multiple categories coming out.
Exactly.
This is how we will look at it, right? From the accumulating data point of view, how do I underwrite them and how do I go ahead and serve that particular industry? More importantly, I'm sure through the new tools, we'll also know easily on what's the size of that industry that could be across, right? What's the kind of a size of the market? So that's where I think MSME becomes stronger with each of these pillars and the long tail of products which exist, right? Imagine each of the product being verticalized and looking at the size and the potential that it can cater to, which are the companies that you would lend for, what's the data that you lend. This kind of defines the vastness of the four-letter word MSME.
Correct. Right? Absolutely.
So four-lettered acronym, which is MSME.
Correct.
So that's amazing, actually. So let's shift towards the needs of MSME organization. As I said, the fourth topic, which is on looking at for them reach, as well as they are often are under transparent with respect to the size and the potential the country holds, as well as the export potential they hold for that particular product, or the raw material which they bring could be one of the most valuable ones and the kind of a product that they could actually market it better.
Correct.
Have you, in your experience, or have you seen where, what could industry do other than, of course, the large e-commerce players who are also making marketplaces available to be sold, right? Most of these organizations will list on any of the e-commerce players and sell.
Correct.
One such initiative is also what government is undertaking on ONDC itself,
Correct.
Open Network Development Commerce, right?
Correct.
So I was listening to one of the government dignitaries' podcast where he said India's penetration in e-commerce is still about 7 or 8%.
Correct.
We still have about 92-93% which is under-penetrated.
Correct.
Right? In this parlance, your thoughts around how MSMEs could look at penetration in the market itself growing a lot more bigger and the potential that exists for them, right? And what could tech do here? The technology backbone could do here in terms of, how could ONDC become a big factor saying that, hey, if you're able to tomorrow sell it on ONDC and I have the reach across the country, across nook and corner of the city, would that also come back to you and say, as Bank Bazaar, I would consider this to be a big factor because ONDC can take this business to different levels?
No, great. I think you're right, Sridhar. I think just to give you some data points, right? As you rightly said when you started, this 63 million people are MSMEs registered in India. Today, from a demand perspective, 25 lakh crore is something which is a gap in the MSME funding as we speak today.
Wow.
This is the number
Staggering
that
number.
it's a
25
staggering
lakh
number.
crore is the unserved demand.
Unserved demand that
Wow.
we have on MSMEs because of the reasons,
Various reasons.
that we have already discussed, right?
Yeah.
But everybody started working on it, which was not the case few years back. And you need a economic push, you need a regulator push, you need a government push, you need a lot of other pushes to look at. Investor push also to an extent. A lot of companies have emerged in the SME space and getting good fundings also. I mean, so I think this is something which is a good economic indicator. Early indicator is what we say when the numbers start looking up. Now coming to the point in terms of how this should emerge, I mean, I have to be very precise on technology and think we know a UPI, this we discussed, right? Alternate data, cash flow lending, all this is any which was enablers. But I think the most important that I see is the confidence now. I think time has come that people in India should be very confident on what they are delivering. Capability, as we discussed, is something which any which will reflect over a period of time. The confidence that we are in the right space at the right time. I think that is critical for all of us. E-commerce have shown that there are so many crores and crores of product being sold on e-commerce. So if you are still not a technology guy, but you're a great manufacturer, there's no dearth of you being left out. You can just you go on Amazon, you go on Flipkart. Now, as you rightly said, ONDC is coming in. You want to pay lower margin, go to ONDC. You want to pay higher margin, go to these large companies. And I'm sure these people will be able to...
They get the reach.
They get the
You're
reach,
answering
right?
one of the questions. They get the reach, right?
They don't have to do marketing. They don't have to invest on that. So there is a use case that you have already developed. The best thing that we see in some of these people that we spoke was, I always say that it is a weighted average approach. For example, at the stage of your company, you decide I want to go with Amazon and Flipkart to start with. And once you have a good reach, people will come look at for your product. Once at that stage, maybe organically or inorganically, you can divide your decision making. So it's a very, for those people, I think the one thing that they lack today is one is awareness.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even know that I can have a great product, but I cannot sell it because I don't have the reach to sell it.
Correct.
So that awareness is something that these people should be taught.
Yep.
And as we started on lending also, same with e-commerce platforms. Now people have started because somebody is doing it, they are able to guide them because the reach has started coming in. Same thing for ONDC also. You have to tell that customer that, or the SME, not the customer, that you can upload this data and you can sell it from this platform and you will save this much money. But the delivery should be as good as, because consumers is becoming so demanding today in India, right?
Very true.
Whether it is ONDC, whether it is, they will not discriminate. They will say, boss, I need this product in 2 days, in this shape, in this form, in this quality. Period. You do it with somebody, I don't care. I want to pay 10 rupees extra, I'm paying. So I think this is where I think that uniformity they'll have to bring in. Awareness, education, and I think confidence on themselves that they can do far better than what, and look at from a long-term perspective also. What sometimes it's a difficult situation. For me, it's easy to say, but for them, they want to just meet the current goals. Today, they're not looking at 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, which is the difference between an SME and maybe a large corporate which looks at from that perspective. So that mindset is something that I would always say that if they are being groomed on how this data should be look like, income tax you should file on this will the benefit of the income tax. Even at a larger forums, you have seen a lot of people are earning a lot of money, but they're not able to even put their ITRs in place. Why is it so? Because they think that the government will take the money and I'll not get the credit.
True.
That awareness, people should say that, boss, short term you are making money, but long term you will be losing far bigger money than what you would even think of. So I think that is something that awareness, education and confidence, I would say that they should be confident on themselves. Tools are available. in the market, whether it's
The
debt,
reach is not a
reach
problem.
is not a problem.
Provided you're able to
Absolutely.
extend that arm of going to any of the e-commerce players or do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's interesting the way you said how the 2 lakh crore of underserved market is lost between a impatient customer who needs a product
Correct.
and there's a producer. It's lost in between the two of them.
Two of them.
As a
Absolutely.
country, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sort of the 225 lakh
Correct.
crore is lost
Lost.
between them. That's a lending opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right? That's a divide which would get fulfilled over a period of time.
Exactly.
Right? Very, very interesting. So let's move to the last part of the conversation, which is to look at how compliance is very important for this particular sector because of the fact that we are talking about MSME, which is largely the maybe people with a lot of artisanal skills and people financial awareness is a little lower. They might be gullible, as you also touched upon. Who are the custodians of a trust with whom? And if that custodian himself is able to cheat them, then that causes default as well, right? So obviously, as a regulator, our regulators are very strict about looking at lending to the people in these organizations or the MSME sector owners to whom these factors need to be considered, right?
Correct.
So from a compliance angle, what have you seen evolving and what do you wish to see? It has to be, there has to be a fine line, right? You can't make it so strict, then the lending goes slow,
Correct.
right? You'll have to keep it like a fine line between, you got to look at keeping the amount of NPAs or thing under control
Correct.
as well as the help the sector grow, right?
Correct.
From that sense, if there's a fine balance, our regulators do it extremely well.
Yeah.
So your thoughts around compliance, how have we been over a period of time? How should it evolve and how do we do going forward?
No, I think, yeah, everybody of us are like, trying to be compliant in every scheme of things. Because I think the gray has gone, earlier what we used to work on gray is pure either white or black.
Yep.
There is nothing like gray, everything, and that's a good thing. I think transparency is something which is coming up in regulators also, in our scheme of things also, for the people who are doing the business, transparent, fair communication. I think these are the key things that we're looking at it. What we are seeing is that with this new DPDP acts coming up, data, privacy, things will even be balanced and maybe short-term blips you will see because obviously when we change technology on the regulator-based technology changes, there is a cost around it. There is a cost of compliance that you build in. Today, the cost of compliance, I would say, is little on a higher side, but people have started figuring it out. How do we, over a period of time, come it down? Because it's whenever we'll do it, you will see these kind of issues coming in. So there is no, but is it good for the long term? Yes, it is good for the long term. The arbitrages businesses are going out. So there is nothing like, if you look at regulator also, we have to give that credit to them in terms of the arbitrage businesses coming down significantly. The customer has to be onboarded. He has to be transparent communication. You look at our digital lending guidelines. It clearly states that this is how a customer uniformly has to be looked at it. There were so many loan sharks that we were looking at. A lot of people lost money in the bargain. But today, I think the good thing is it's a pure transparent communication. This is what it is. This is how it is. And this is the process you have to follow. There is no ambiguity around it. And obviously, when you talk about tier 2, 3, 4, the communication has to be backed with phygital touch points with the guy who's close to them and they're able to make them understand. The complaint redressal system has changed, undergone significantly. Whether it is BFSI, whether it is insurance. Today there is or even investment products. Everywhere we have seen SEBI has done a great job, RBI has done a great job. All the regulators have started making a complaint redressal system very, very robust, which is a very important thing. We see in our own consumer data. Today, all the banking board today, when they meet, the first thing that they discuss, and I'm sure you must also have looked at it, is the customer complaints. How are they managing? What are the tats on resolving those complaints?
True.
If it's an RBI complaint, the priority 1. If it is this complaint, priority 2. And there is a mechanism around it. So this is really helping the country in terms of customer. There is some redressal that I'm able to make, and I'm sure, I'm able to, as a consumer, which I don't understand a lot of things, I'm able to be protected from that perspective. So transparency, communication, and customer redressal, I would say, are the 3 pillars on which a regulator is building the entire tech stack, and privacy, which is on data side, which I think you and me will have to work as a technology companies that we need to protect data for these consumers.
True.
Without their consent, we cannot use this data for anybody's benefit.
Yep.
So I think that concept is becoming very clear. So privacy and consent, consumer side consent and privacy. For the overall regulator, I think these are the 3 points on transparency, communication, and customer redressal. I think these 5 pillars, I think in every conversation, regulator is trying to build in, and it's very clear and straightforward guidelines that they're putting in. You look at digital lending guidelines which has come, which is clearly articulating how a customer loan needs to be shown. Same thing will be replicated for SME. There is no difference. The same FAQs will be put in the way we put in for consumer loans. The same will put in for SME loans. So I think that is something which is the need of the hour, and I think as companies, as responsible citizens and responsible corporates, I think this is what everybody should abide with.
Yeah, very well summarized actually. There's one more tangential angle I'll add to what you said actually. Your summary was very good. Education also.
Correct.
Right? I like the ad which our regulator recently launched saying that there's a lady who gets a credit of a loan, right, into her account.
Correct.
Then there is an equal persona of her who says, why don't you buy a car now that you got the money?
Correct.
She says, no, I'm going to grow my business.
Yes.
Right? There's also that awareness which is coming in by the regulator saying that, hey, you use the money that you meant for borrowing,
Correct.
not for something else and get caught
Correct.
in the bargain, right? That kind of a basic education is at least beginning to happen, that you borrow for a certain purpose, you got to use it for a certain purpose.
Correct.
I'm sure as Bank Bazaar, you'll have a percentage of people who gone ahead and borrowed for something, used it for something else, and that money goes as a bad lending asset, right? So there's another angle that I want you to touch upon, that when you look at compliance with the respective kind of an industry as well as a credit risk or a credit assessment memo,
Correct.
right? What's the kind of a credit risk parameters that you've seen in the MSME industry so far? If you happen to have a sneak peek into picking up some of the underwriting parameters on which people have said these are the risk items on which we can't lend, or these are the risk items on which, provided there is something else that the customer does, we can lend, right? What's the risk that you have seen in this sector in your experience?
So I think the few risks that we see in terms of, because majority MSMEs have a proprietorship concerns, right? So when we look at
Sole
proprietorship concerns, so when we look at those concerns, somebody must have defaulted somewhere. Their awareness were not there. They said, what will happen if I don't even pay a 1 lakh rupee loan? Nothing will happen. Now the guy is struggling because that guy is not getting a 25 lakh rupee loan to run that shop. The problem is the awareness at point of time when he was an individual. So that was one problem that we see, and that hits him back hard on this side. So sole proprietorships, we see this is a major problem that we see from a credit score perspective itself, and credit built up perspective. That is one area that we see a problem. Second, books of accounts. Normally these people are looking now, thankfully after demon, we are seeing a lot of books getting better and better, you know. But unfortunately they had a COVID time also. So you have to look at that time the cash flows got screwed, things were not great. So if I have to look at a 3 or 4 year balance sheet, obviously this problem will come to me. I will not see that number for the next last 4-5 years. When I have to lend at large scale. So I think that is some problem that we see in terms of not a very straight line, this thing. We are used for a straight line kind of stuff, right? We are not used for a blips.
But maybe you want to just reiterate on the statement that you made about cash flows went for a little bit of a haywire. Right? That part you want to repeat from there and speak about it?
Yeah. So what happened was that,
during COVID time, the demonetization, from there probably you could stretch that a little bit.
So basically what happened, from demonetization, what happened that obviously a lot of cash earnings which was coming, it started eroding for these consumers, at least the MSMEs which were, I was attuned or maybe tuned just for take that cash into my hand, and I was never reporting it to the government. That was a problem. Then you had a GST reform coming in, and people started looking at an input credit kind of a stuff. So the GST reforms obviously started bringing those people from informal economy to formal economy.
Right.
Which was a great regulatory and government of India move that people have started paying GST on the input itself. So I think this has helped to make them into the final this thing. But the problem that we faced was, like we said on sole proprietorship, the earlier data was not marrying with their intention. So they defaulted on something on their personal capacity, but their company is getting hurt because of the earlier issue that they have faced. Second, when COVID hit, a lot of these SMEs got, because of lockdowns, because of earnings issues, their balance sheet is not looking great for the last 4-5 years. It started growing in the last 2-3 years, but still the business model has to go for a sea change. Demon plus COVID plus all this coming up, that become a challenge for them. And I think unfortunately we are not giving that the leeway on that side. That is something that I
Yeah.
would look at, that we should look at from cycles and seasonality also. Economic cycle downturn, everybody will be hit. But normally our scoring models today does not account for that
Cater to
kind
that.
of
Yeah.
this thing. So if we built in
True.
that into our scoring models
Yeah.
for everyone, I'm not even saying for MSMEs, we should do it even for consumer loans. Lot of loans got repriced during COVID, right? Lot of loans got repriced in terms of restructuring also.
Yeah.
But somewhere I still see that negativity comes into for those borrowers. I think if you are able to move that out and we say that there will be tough times for everyone, you have to have that kind of seasonality being put in for those people also.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my recommendation
Very nice.
to look at it. Yeah.
So that actually alludes me towards a very interesting topic as Bank Bazaar also, right? You have pioneered this situation of a marketplace kind of a viewpoint, right? What's your thought process on embedded finance? How will it help in the context of MSME business or overall embedded finance itself? Do you see good amount of potential? Because that's another parallel lever which tends to come up and say, hey, I can lend you on these lines as well, not just on the straightforward way, right? For example, a large MNC saying, I can look at also lending you because you're going to be selling my product here,
Correct.
right? Kind of a viewpoint, right? How does embedded finance would help here in this situation or in any other situation that you could articulate? Embedded finance is a segment, what do you see it serving the 25 lakh crore underserved market?
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting point, Sridhar, you made. Embedded finance, if you look at, from a data perspective, today the industry is about $6.9 billion. In 2024, last year reported data. It's going to go to $34 billion. Wow. $34 billion in just 5 years. We are talking 2029. It's going to grow at 38% CAGR. None of the industry will grow at that pace that embedded finance is growing. The reason is very simple. As you rightly said, alternate data, this e-commerce data, this data, other data, all that put together will make sure that embedded finance is going to grow exponentially. This is, and that's where a lot of this BFSI look at today. Just let's take examples, right? Today you go to HDFC Smart Buy. It's technically an embedded finance, right? I have a credit card. I go and redeem that card with someone else. I'm buying tickets from somewhere else. I book hotels. I book airport lounges. I can do anything. It's like an embedded finance kind of environment. So the sole product is different, but the use case is different. And I think this is a very simple concept for a lot of consumers also. Just don't look at one product specific this thing. Look at from need specific scenarios. We are all fixated, including us. We are blamed for that we have been a need. We never look at need. We just look at our product and we will try to push that product only. The point is that if you are able to make it like a large canvas on which you make the entire diagram and then put it all those features which gives convenience to consumers, trust to consumers, embedded finance nothing beyond that. It's basically the customer trusts you that this feature will work in spite of the fact that you are not the owner of the feature.
Yeah.
This is the concept that it builds on, right? So I think this is exactly the same thing with embedded finance. Super industry, today a lot of people are trying to build wrappers around on these things also. But the great point is whatever you're going to experience in that particular framework should be seamless. That's the only word of caution. You might give him any product, but the experience that you give him has to be seamless. That's the key message that I would say on embedded finance.
You made a very, very interesting point wherein we've gone through this wave of saying, when I walk into a store, when I look at a particular product, there's finance available.
Correct.
But sitting at home, if I open my bank account and if I had something in mind to buy, can I also look at the marketplace where I can buy it easily?
Absolutely.
So very close to my circle of finance is when I can buy a product as well.
Absolutely.
I just don't have to walk into a store or walk into a airline counter and buy a ticket and things like that, right? So that's where I think product is getting made available where finance is and finance is made available where the product is. Right?
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful parody that exists in the market today, right? It's amazing the way. And also, let's fast forward embedded finance into the area of, let's say, for example, freight insurance. Freight companies can actually embed insurance inside, right? Then forward the same to wherever there is a embedded products that are being sold, and how do you look at taking care of financing it as well as underwriting it, or looking at how covering the risk through insurance. All of these things are very, very interesting use cases the way it's emerging, right? In the same way, if you look at it, every airline website today has, do you want to cover insurance?
Correct.
Along with it. Their embedded insurance example is right there for us, right? For your travel, he covers it only for that duration of the travel.
Correct.
Right? If somebody wants to avail, that's an easier way to avail insurance.
Correct.
So amazing the way the market is spanning out for us across embedded finance as well as credit risk and those topics that we spoke about. So compliance angle is very, very critical. But looking at the overall situation of compliance and how guarded we are as a country, what are those 3 or 4 things that you would see as a sort of showstoppers or threats that might come across for MSME sector? If we're not addressing it now, they can become bigger. One thing you spoke about is also to look at how fraud could be one that could be assessed and needs to be curtailed extremely well. Second one is an education, educating the people based on, hey, be a responsible borrower and be a responsible payback. Right? Those are 2 things that will help you move forward. Just let's contextualize this also to what government can do in the area of Udyam, credit guarantee scheme, right? How could we do it much more better so that we are able to avert some of the situations that might come up in the MSME lending in future very proactively? Maybe your thoughts on what we could do very differently. Udyam is one which is at least helping solve the registration of MSMEs and things like that, right? Then there is a credit guarantee scheme that government has also launched. How could we take this to scale to avert some of it? One was, as we were alluding towards, was sort of a credit line that we can provide to people. Next one is just to, as you collect your thoughts, I'm just adding more. Today, I think as a industry, we are looking at collection there's a technology for collection which is available, as well as metrics available to see to it that tomorrow maybe we'll look at an era where there's a collection score also upfront in lending.
Correct.
In your underwriting itself,
Correct.
right? There's a collection score based on past history. This person's collection score is 90 on 100, so easy to lend types.
Correct.
Right? So in the past 2 loans, he's gone ahead and done it. So that could be one risk of looking at telling the customer also that, hey, keep a tab on your collection score, not just on your credit worthiness score also, so that if you're able to pay this faster, you'll be able to borrow more. Right? That could be one situation, right? Fraud could be other situation, right? The other aspect of it is also that how the embedded finance comes into picture and how, as an end manufacturer, you might have 2 different options, right? To look at it, right? Those could be some of the factors to, I think I've partly answered my question. Anything you wish to add, you could add.
Yeah. No, I think you've answered a lot of things in that sense. But I think
it was all your pages from your chapter.
No, it was like really interesting and exciting. So what we see also the same, I think I'll reflect on the same thing in terms of collections, for example. You're rightly saying, see, this AI is helping see, AI started with an operating efficiency tool.
Yeah.
Now it has become like a decision-making outfit.
True.
Sophisticated decision-making outfit. I should use that word like sophistication.
Yeah.
So this process itself is changing, today you look at digital collections per se, forget everything else. With UPI coming up, digital collections and improving, there's a report by McKinsey that they've said that the people who are collecting digitally, they are far more efficient than collecting physically. And with the regulator you have seen, today this time is not that you can send those people at home, collect money. That's not going to happen, right? Let's be clear, data, technology will help and aid and payments. So I think this payment also ecosystem, and you rightly said on embedded finance, initially what we were doing is we were selecting a product and then we're doing the payment. Today it's other way around. Today we are going for a payment site and from there we're selecting a product. There's a card offer coming in from somewhere else and I say, wow man, this is offer
I'm on the payment page, let me take another card.
Let me take another this thing.
Another card.
So this is how today the consumer is evolving, today how we're buying. The pattern is like payment itself is driving my behavior.
New business as well.
The new business as well, which was never the case. It was a residual business model that is to work with, right? So it's a brilliant and beautiful landscape that we see in our position, whether it is consumer, whether it is the MSMEs, regulators doing their job. We just have to comply without making any jugards there. I think people who have tried making jugards, we have seen what has happened in terms of embargoes, in terms of, so which is a good thing for the country. Short term, I think we have to have a course correction done. And I completely agree on digital collections. Things are moving rapidly. A collection score is a brilliant idea in terms of people should start giving the score, and then people start consuming also.
Yeah.
It's a chicken egg story. What somebody will say in a banking domain is that, no, we'll not consume it, so nobody will make it. The point is, if somebody is able to make it and then consume, somebody will obviously consume it.
Yeah.
But it has to be authentic. It has to be trust that people have to make. And if regulator comes with a framework around this, and there's a record that they provide to the private entities, I think they can do a massive job around this and clear the ecosystem and clean the ecosystem also.
Yeah.
On that side, by my view.
Absolutely, Pankaj. I think you summarized it really well. It's phenomenal the way we are able to open up some new use cases for ourselves today in our conversation, as well as look at the depth to which that we could go to address this particular sector, right? So I really want to thank you for very, very rich and exciting conversation, right? We have an exciting future ahead in the MSME segment. Thank you for coming over today, and you have a wonderful rest of the day, Pankaj.
Thank you so much, Sridhar.
Thank you.